So we're going to talk today, as Bob said, about collaboration, and we are going to make you think. So it's going to be a little painful maybe, but it's going to be fun pain. It's going to be the kind of pain that you get when you work out. We're going to go through a series of exercises to pick up exactly where Melissa left off on innovation and collaboration and great storytelling. And what I want to do by the end of our session today, our 2 sessions today, is send you out into the world with tools. So you can take apart all of the great things that Melissa talked about and put them back together again to create real collaborations and real innovations in your hometowns, in your organizations, and on the tough problems that you're working on. But before I do that, I want to see what questions you guys have about innovation and collaboration. I got a bunch of material to talk about, and we're going to spend some fun time together, but I want to make sure that I am in service of you. And the secret about these shoes is that they are Nike Air, so I can run from the front to the back really quickly. So who wants to give me some exercise? Who's got a burning question about innovation and collaboration that you want to make sure I address? Here we go. There you go. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
Rachel Ibarra, Jupiter, Florida. Nature Speaks, educational and empowerment programs for children and adults with horses.
So what do you want to know?
We need to raise money. We're a new startup. We've applied for our 501c3 in December 2013. We still don't have it. We're waiting for the IRS.
I've been there.
We need to raise money, and we need to raise it now. How do we do it?
Okay, so we're going to talk about how to raise money. What else? Yes, ma'am. Again, who you are and where you're from?
My name is Janet Ward. I'm the CEO of Parents Information and Resource Center. It's a community mental health center, psychiatric services.
Awesome.
I'm trying to plan for my company to become a training academy, a national training academy. I want to do more partnership with the universities to take in the postdoc and the interns, the psych interns, and the social work interns. I'm trying to figure out how to do it and not become crazy.
Awesome. Well, I don't know about the latter part of that, because I think you have to be a little crazy to be in this sector, but we're going to do fundraising, we're going to do scale, we're going to do partnerships. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. My name is Narissa Street. I am a inspirational storyteller and event planner, and I want to find out how to best collaborate with my nonprofit clients.
Awesome. So collaborating to tell stories. That's a great idea. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. I'm with Impact Broward, and we have the National Senior Corps programs in Broward County, but we have a wonderful program, Encore Connect, that we have just lost our funding for, and we are looking for capacity building grants. And they're getting more and more difficult to find, so I hope you can, or someone in the room can help us find those capacity building grants.
How do we strengthen our capacity in our institutions? How do we get money for it? Let me come back over here.
I am Samuel Pierre with Haitian Heroes. I'm the president of that organization. And our mission is to help the Haitian community stay in school and stay out of trouble. How do we identify good organizations that really have interest in this issue?
So how do we find people who share our interests? You got one right back there behind you. See, we're connecting right here on the floor. Yes, sir. Tell us who you are.
My name is Corporal Bert Richards with the Veteran Speakers Forum. I'd like to know how you get the teachers to be aware of the fact that we go to schools to educate children on honoring those who served in the military and a little bit of American history, which they seem to have died out. Everybody wants to be a football champ, a basketball champ, a baseball champ, a spelling bee champ, but nobody wants to be a history champ. How do we get the teachers to wake up, invite veterans to the schools?
I love it. I love it. I wanted to be a history champ. I didn't get it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Jackson. I'm the Executive Director of Partners in Education, Inc. We are the nonprofit organization that powers the school-based business and community partnerships for Broward County. So I'm responsible for that process in all of Broward schools. And my question is, how do I get businesses in the same industry to collaborate and partner without feeling some kind of competitive edge? Because I had a fight almost break out at a meeting.
Yeah. Getting competitors to collaborate, that is a big issue. Behind me, in front. Oh, here we go. One more.
Mark Halpert from the 3D Learner Foundation, focused on success by third grade. How do we get school districts and schools to collaborate?
Yeah. Getting nonprofit. I've seen a lot of competition in the private sector. It's nothing like the competition I see amongst nonprofits themselves. Okay, so we're going to get into a lot of those issues. We're going to get even to a few more. But before I do that, I want to tell you a story. So this is the American honeybee. And the American honeybee is dying, and nobody knows why. Well, actually, that's not true. Lots of people know lots of whys, and that's the problem. That's the problem with problems. That's the problem with problems in the commons. No one problem, no one solution, and no one owner for either the problem or the solution. This is the American honeybee keeper. He owns his bees, but he doesn't own honeybee pollination. He owns his bees and his beehives, but he doesn't own the land or the plants and the flowers and the crops and the vegetables where his bees go to forage for food and collect pollen. This is the American farmer. She owns that land. She owns the plants and the flowers and the vegetables and the crops, but she doesn't own honeybee pollination either, because she doesn't own any of the upstream means of producing the seeds and the manure and the soil treatments and the equipment and services and all the other things that go into making her modern farm function. Nor does she own any of the downstream. She doesn't own any of the retailing, the packaging, and the distribution, and all the things that take her crops and flowers and plants and vegetables to market. This is the story of specialization. That is the way that we in a modern economy increase productivity, by specializing. This is also the story of modern American agriculture, which, by and large, is an incredible success story. We feed more people and produce more food with less land, with less water, with less chemicals, with less pesticides, with less energy, and fewer people than any other time in human history and in any other place on the planet. But, as with anything, when we overextend, our strengths become our weaknesses. And when we specialize, cracks can open up in between specialists, and into one of those cracks has fallen the little honeybee. All of those different specialists working on their individual parts of the problem have left an orphan in the form of honeybee pollination. And this is a problem in the commons. And it is a problem in the commons not only because it lacks an owner and it lacks a single, simple solution, it is what we call a multifactorial problem, which is a fancy scientific way of saying that it has lots of possible causes. And with all of these lots of different causes, there is no single boogeyman, nor is there one shiny silver bullet that's going to solve the problem. And as Melissa said, we have to find ways of bringing people together to tackle multifactorial problems. But when you do that, normally what happens is a cycle of blame. It's not my bee husbandry practices, it's your pesticides. It's not my pesticides, it's your agricultural policies. It's not my agricultural policies, it's the worldwide demand for food. And even if you can push past all that blame-making, all that competitiveness, what you're left with is a right versus right decision. Not right versus wrong. Anybody with a moral compass can usually make a right versus wrong decision. But the really tough decisions, the decisions that people like us in the civil sector have to deal with every day, are right versus right trade-offs. It is intrinsically a good idea to feed a hungry planet. It is intrinsically a good idea to safeguard the health of the honeybee. But what do you do when those two things are in tension? And even if you can resolve that tension, what you're left with is also a problem that's on a slow burn. Nobody is going to die tomorrow if the honeybees aren't taken care of. But we all stand to lose in the long term if we don't take care of this problem. These are the problems with problems in the commons, and these are the problems that we in the civil sector have to deal with every day. By definition, what you're tackling, because you're in this room and in this sector, are problems that don't have simple answers. They can't be solved by markets alone. They can't be solved by governments alone. But you are catalysts of collaboration. You are catalysts of innovation and catalysts of collaboration, because you have the convening power to bring people together across these sectors to work on these solutions. Melissa asked you to put up your hands if you were in the nonprofit community. Can you do that again for me? Leave them up if you've worked in the private sector before. Leave them up if you've also worked in the public sector. So those of you who still have your hands up, you've worked in all three sectors at one time in your lives? Okay, see? It gets fewer and fewer. Very few people, thank you, you can put your hands down. Very few people have worked across all three sectors. You are in some ways unique, even that you've worked across two sectors. And how we bring people together to work on these problems is something of a challenge. And what we've done is to look at how can you take ideas from the blackboard and from conception and accelerate them into reality and to production. And in looking at that, what we did is we went to a hotbed of collaboration and innovation, Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is the pressure cooker in this country for how we really fully form ideas and get them into production. And what we found when we went to Silicon Valley is a set of tools, a set of techniques, which I'm going to pass along to you in an open source way. So open source is a fancy word for free. Everything I'm about to tell you, I'm going to give it to you for free that you can continue to use and adapt. But we took this idea, a set of ideas from Silicon Valley called Lean Startup. And the idea behind Lean Startup is how do we accelerate an idea and put it into production? And there's three basic ideas here. One is something called a minimum viable product, which is what is the minimum you need to know in order to get out into the world and start selling. The second is a business model canvas, which is a one-page business plan, not multiple volumes, but one page. You can get everybody on the same page about the minimum viable product, your business model, and get out in the world and start selling. And the third is a startup accelerator, often called startup weekends, where entrepreneurs come in on a Friday and they leave on a Sunday with a fully formed minimum viable product and a business plan. Now, we've taken that idea and we've adapted it for dealing with problems in the commons. And the first thing that we look at is we take these ideas. The minimum viable product becomes the minimum viable partnership. The business model canvas becomes the partner model canvas. And the third idea of a startup accelerator becomes a set of labs that we help conduct, a data lab and a partner lab. We're not able to do it in one compressed summit, but we do it in two. And we start first with what we call a data lab, which starts with what Melissa was talking about, what is. We ground ourselves in what is actually happening in the world, and we do it with science and we do it with data. And we bring stakeholders together and we ask them not to worry about who's to blame or even how to solve the problem, but just simply, what does the data tell us? In the case of the honeybees, we brought together over 100 stakeholders, from USDA to the EPA to the large land-grant universities and researchers and scientists, the big agribusinesses, the major honeybee keeper trade associations, the big growers and farmers, and we put them in a room for a day and a half, and we just inundated them with science. Now, honeybees are a complicated issue, and it's been blamed, declines in honeybee health have been blamed on everything from space aliens to cell phones. And we got them to agree on 5 principal causes. That in and of itself was a huge deal, because not only was the science conflicting, but there were really convicted, really smart people who believed that talking about anything other than their one cause was anathema, that it was the end of the world to admit that there might be more than one cause. So getting these really well-reasoned, smart people to set down their beliefs and to look at not what do we think or what do we believe, but really what do we know about what is. And getting them to agree on 5 principal causes was a big deal. The second thing we did is we then sent them back to their organizations, and we said, okay, now you understand what is. Now go back to your organizations, and we're going to get you back together in 90 days, and we want you to come back prepared to make commitments about what you can do about what if. What can you do in order to really take those problems apart and put them back together again with distinct partnerships and innovations to solve them? We bring them back together in a partner lab. In the partner lab, we use this tool, the Partner Model Canvas, which is what we're going to learn today. And we help them take apart those problems, figure out how to resolve some of those issues that you were all asking about. Who are the right partners to bring to the table? What do they need to bring to the table? How are we going to tackle the problem? How are we going to raise the money to do it? Who needs to be in leadership? Who needs to be following? And we design these specific partnerships, and we send them out into the world with experiments, specific prototypes and pilot programs that they can run to test whether or not the solutions that they've come up with will actually work. So that's a method. It's not our method. It is our method, but I'm giving it to you. And we're going to kind of walk through it together a little bit. But the idea here is to kind of take apart some of the things that Melissa said and start with what is, send people back to their organizations to figure out what they want to do about what is, and then bring them back together in order to think about what if and to design specific experiments and pilot programs that will help to move the needle on those things. Now, what I want to do in a very brief amount of time is take you through a little bit of theory, a little bit of philosophy, and then into some really practical co-creation exercises that will hopefully tell you or give you some experience using these tools so that you can go back to your organizations and actually apply this stuff. And what we're going to do is going to take you through the theory of not just of this lean startup idea, but of some very well-reasoned social experiments and social research that's been done on adaptive leadership and empathy, and also on how to co-create, particularly my expertise happens to be with the private sector, but how you can co-create solutions with multiple stakeholders across multiple organizations. Other stakeholders within your organization, other stakeholders outside your organization, other stakeholders outside of your sector. Before I dive into that, questions. Does anybody have any questions before I dive in? I can run again. Yeah. I like easy questions.
Can you just give your definition of commons?
Of commons, yes. So the commons, right, this is an idea, is it John Stuart Mill? Can somebody quote me on that? I think it's Mill. He came up with this idea that if you have an area that is owned by everybody, it's owned by no one. And if nobody owns it, then nobody's responsible for it. And the analogy that was originally given in the original work was of literally of like a village commons, like a common square. And if everybody came and grazed their sheep there, and everybody came and opened their stores there or held their shops there, then the commons would deteriorate because no one person was responsible for it. So we live in the global commons. You work in the global commons because you're working on things that don't have a specific owner per se. Does that answer the question? Yep. Other questions? Okay, we're going to get into some lot of interaction and exercise here in just a second. So let me just take you through a couple of theories. The first is this idea of adaptive leadership. Most of the problems that we face in our daily lives are technical problems. They have a clear definition, and they have a clear set of solutions. And all we need to do is find the right people and put them in a room and have them come up with the right answers. And then we need to find the people with the authority to implement those problems, implement those solutions. But the problems that you work on, the problems in the global commons, aren't technical solutions per se. They're not technical problems either. They're problems that require adaptive leadership. We don't really necessarily all have a common understanding of what the problem is, so we have to learn what the problem is before we can even start to solve it. And then once we try to solve it, we might have to continue working to iterate on and experiment with what our potential solutions might be. And the work doesn't require, and the implementation doesn't just require an authority, it requires stakeholders to agree. So take my example of the honeybees again. In the case of the honeybees, the problem was unclear. We didn't necessarily know, is it that their health is declining? Are they dying? Why are they dying? We don't know. And even if we had the technical solution for it, it requires multiple stakeholders to implement the problem. I can't just go give it to beekeepers. I need the farmer as an active partner in it. I need the agribusiness as an active partner in it. I might even need Congress as an active partner in it. And you know how hard it can be to get Congress to do anything. So it requires a lot of different stakeholders to solve a problem like that. And I bet you that most of the problems that you're trying to work on are those kinds of problems. They're not ones that you can solve on your own, or that a company could go solve on its own, or that a government could go solve on its own. They require you to work together to figure out how to develop those solutions. Adaptive leadership problems and problems in the commons need us to not just figure out what the answer is. We've also got to change our mindsets, our beliefs, and behaviors. We recently did some of this work with DC low-income solar. So the District of Columbia wants to bring solar energy to low-income housing. If ever there was a place where solar energy could work, it's the District of Columbia. The infrastructure is set up, the economic incentives are there, the government is supportive, the cost of solar energy has come down, but it's still not being brought to low-income neighborhoods. And part of the reason is because it takes a change in the mindsets, beliefs, and behaviors of the people that would be required to finance and implement the solar energy solution. When I was in college, I went to a pizza shop one time, and I wanted to order pepperoni pizza with extra garlic. Doesn't seem like it should be that hard. I know that they have garlic in the kitchen. Can you just put some extra garlic on it? Waitress refused. She wouldn't do it. And we kept going back and forth. Well, can you put they've got garlic, right? It's an Italian restaurant. They've got to have garlic somewhere back in that kitchen. And she wouldn't do it, and she wouldn't do it. And finally she blurted out, there's no button for that on the cash register. She wasn't going to do it because there's no button on the cash register. The problem with DC low-income solar is there's no button in the spreadsheet for the banker to push for how to figure out how to price this kind of a loan. It's known, the mathematical formula for doing it is known, but it's not built into the software. So it requires a change in belief and mindset as much as it requires a change in the actual solution. And getting bankers who are inherently pretty conservative people to do something differently is pretty hard to do. The other thing that you need is to build on the past. So people will often tell you that, the ubiquitous they, will tell you that people fear change. I'm here to tell you that people do not fear change. People love change. People fear loss. And people fear loss inordinately more than they seek gain. 3 to 5 times as much. People fear loss more than they seek gain. It is hardwired into our DNA. Our ancestors, who knew how to hang on to what they had, consistently beat out and passed on their genes to those who went chasing greener pastures. So we fear loss. And if you really want to get people to change, you have to paint a picture. You have to paint a picture that is grounded in what is today, that explains to them that you have an understanding of how tough their lives are where it is today, and exactly what's going on in their lives today. But then you want to get them to move to the future. In order to get them to move to the future, you need to do 2 things. First, after you've demonstrated that you understand what it is today, you need to paint a compelling vision of the future. And a vision of the future that is either so much better than what is today, that they're willing to give up what they fear of losing, or you have to paint a picture that leaving things as they are is so bad that it's more fearful to stay put than it is to go over there. Now, that's really hard. Now, there are some people who are really great at this, Martin Luther King, Barack Obama, Mahatma Gandhi. They're good at doing that. If you're not that, there may be some Gandhis and Kings in the room here today, but if you're not that, the way to get there is through experimentation. Letting people, instead of having to cause them to predict the future, allow them to test the future. So if you can design discrete experiments that allow them to test whether or not going to the future is going to be a little less scary than staying put, then you give them the opportunity to make that path and to make that path for themselves. Now, experimentation also requires diversity of experiments. Most of our organizations are hierarchical organizations, and they're designed not for diversity, but for single-minded execution. And that is entirely appropriate and entirely good when you know what you're doing. When you don't know what you're doing yet, or you're trying to figure it out, that is the exact opposite of what you want to do. So when you're trying to figure out how to tackle a problem and you're trying to bring other people to the table to help you tackle that problem, you need to be willing to take multiple experiments at once. Then once you figure it out, you want to shut down the experiments that don't work and just go with those that do. That means you have to do what Melissa said. You have to be willing to embrace failure. So embracing failure doesn't mean that we want to run headlong into failure. Nobody wants to fail. What you want to do is set up tests that allow you to determine whether or not something is working or not. So it needs to be grounded in evidence, and it needs to be able to be something that you will know whether or not it's worked or not. And then once you've determined that, you shut down those experiments that aren't working without blame. If you blame people when something goes wrong in an experimental mode, what have you done? You've discouraged future experimentation. You've shut down the very engine of innovation that you're trying to create. What you want to do is create a tolerance for smart risk-taking and for intelligent failure. The relationship is very correlational between the ability and the willingness of an organization to take risks and embrace failure and its ability to innovate. Without one, you cannot have the other. At the same time, that's really easy for me to say, but it's really hard if you're using other people's money. If you're using donor money, if you're using government money, for me to tell you to run headlong into risk and headlong into failure is very hypocritical. So what do you do about that? Well, I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and I talked to Congressman Moran, who happens to be my congressman from Northern Virginia, and I asked him this question. I said, I've talked to lots of people in the civil sector, I've talked to lots of people in Silicon Valley, and they all say, yes, let's embrace failure. What we need are public sector partners who will embrace failure with us. And I said, Congressman Moran, what do you think about that? He says, I think that's stupid. I said, okay, well, that was not the answer I was expecting, so say more. Why is that stupid? And he says, well, you need failure in experimentation. You need failure during innovation. You don't need failure in execution. And what the government is really good at is the government is good at scale and at longevity. It takes a really long time to set something up in the government. It takes a really long time to tear it down in the government. And in fact, our founders set up the government to be slow and deliberate, not fast and quick. So what we need is to find new ways of working together with the private sector and with the civil sector so that they're out there taking those risks, and then we can follow behind them and help them scale and help them build up success. So the real question then becomes, how do you design those experiments? How do you fund those experiments? And how do you put them in such a way that you can see what's going to work, what's not going to work, and then scale them up, those that work and those that don't work? That takes a lot of patience, but it also takes a lot of empathy. Empathy? What's empathy? Well, empathy is the ability to put yourself in the position of somebody else. Again, that's really easy to say. How do you really demonstrate empathy? Well, oddly enough, empathy starts with vulnerability. It starts with a willingness on your part to be vulnerable to somebody else and to admit that you don't have all the answers and to admit that you need their help to come up with those answers. I work with a lot of nonprofits, and what I see nonprofits do over and over again is they will want to fully bake an idea before they take it out to somebody else to test it and to see if they'll partner with them. So what I see is a nonprofit will go away and they'll come up with the best chocolate chip cookie in the world. And they'll take that chocolate chip cookie out to the private sector and they will say, private sector, help me to market and distribute this wonderful chocolate chip cookie. And what the private sector heard was, blah, 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 write me a big check, blah, 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 blah. That's all they heard. The private sector goes, the company looks at it and goes, you know what? I love chocolate chip cookies. I want to help you distribute and sell these chocolate chip cookies. But here's the thing. If you'd come to me 6 months ago, I would have told you that I have an incredible recipe for chocolate chips. I would have given it to you. And I have an idle factory over there, and I would have let you use it to manufacture the chocolate chip cookies. But this chocolate chip cookie, that's got peanuts in it. My whole workforce is allergic to peanuts, and I can't partner with you. Co-creation, transformation, innovation start with vulnerability. They start with a willingness to show other people, I don't know if you could read that, to show other people that you need their help and that you want to co-create with them. If all you're doing is taking your idea out and telling people and trying to get them to join on board with you, you're telling and selling and you're way down here on the low end of transformation. If you really want somebody to help you, you really want to create a transformative impact on the world, you need to be up here in the upper right-hand quadrant. And that requires co-creation. That requires bringing people to the table and having them help you construct the solutions. So what do? Well, we call this partnering for social innovation. And the way that this works is that a social innovation partnership, in our definition, is a collaboration between two or more parties from the civil, private, or public sectors. We call those people key players. And we bring them together to do a set of things called the key activities. And we worked with them to help improve the condition of a given group of people. What issue are they trying to solve, and what unique value are they going to bring to that solution, and what resources can those different partners bring together, along with the contributions of donors and other supporters, under a set of specific terms and conditions, which becomes the relationship and the partnership. So that's a lot of words. But what we've done is we've broken it down into this tool, which actually you have on your tables. You have an example of this tool. It's called the Partner Model Canvas. It is a one-page business plan, in essence, a one-page partnership plan. And what it does is it breaks down these different issues into discrete questions to ask yourselves. And the way that we kind of read this thing is we start with the two central pillars, the issue to solve and the value proposition. And then we work on the two outside pillars, the target population and the key players. And then we kind of move around and trying to solve and answer these different questions. And the reason why we do it this way is because what we found is that in order to get to that point of collaboration, that point of experimentation, people don't need to know everything. but what they need to know is a little bit about a lot. And with this tool, what you get is a method by which to walk through answering these questions for yourself and for your partners to the point that they're willing to go back and not just bring their resources and their capital and their money to the table, that they're willing to use their social networks to bring other people to the table. And that's really what you want at the end of the day. You want not just to start a partnership, but you really want to start a movement where people are willing to go out and get other people to help join that cause. And that's what this partnership model canvas is about. It's about trying to take these problems apart, break them up into discrete elements. And what I want to do is I'm going to run quickly through what these elements are, and then we're actually going to do an exercise. So the first thing we start to focus on is, what is the issue? What's the problem we're trying to solve? You would be surprised how many times if you bring multiple people to the table, they're like the blind man feeling the elephant. One guy's got a hold of the tail and he thinks it's a snake. Another guy's got a hold of the trunk and he thinks it's a fire hose. Another guy's got a hold of the leg and he thinks it's a tree trunk. We've got to get really clear first is, what is this problem we're trying to solve? In the case of the honeybees, like I said, it was being blamed on everything from space aliens to cell phones. So we had to figure out, okay, how do we break this down to 5 discrete problems? We identified the 5 most important ones and we came to consensus. In the case of DC Solar, we figured out, well, you know what it is it's actually a lack of intermediaries. There's not enough finance here to help make this happen. So how do we create the financial tools that would make it happen? Then we look at the value proposition. What are the unique results that this partnership can produce? What are the parties here gathered able to do that nobody else can do? In the case of the honeybees, what we found was the solutions actually are out there. They're being run in individual pilot programs all over the states. What this partnership could do is build a honeybee health coalition of national importance and national scale, find discrete experiments and scale them up. Who are we trying to solve the problem for? In the case of the honeybees, we looked at, well, are we solving this for all pollinators? Well, that's bats, and that's monarch butterflies, and that's woodcutter bees, and carpenter bees, and honeybees. Well, we don't want to hurt any of those pollinators, but we really are focused on honeybees. And not only are we focused on honeybees, we're focused on commercial honeybees and commercial honeybee keepers, those that help support large-scale commercial agriculture. In the case of DC Solar, we looked at, well, we're really focused on targeting specific low-income neighborhoods. So you really are trying to narrow down the population to figure out really who are you trying to help. Who are we going to bring to the table? Who are our key players? Who's going to be the partners in this organization? People are asking, you know, how do I get the private sector involved? How do I get my board involved? How do I get the government involved? Well, who do you need at the table? When we looked around at this group of 100 stakeholders we brought together for honeybee health, we realized we were missing 2 critical parties. We were missing the large environmental defense organizations, and we were missing large landowners. So we went out and we got them. Then you have to figure out, how do you want to relate to that target population? Are you going to produce things that you're going to give to them for free, or are you going to require them to sweat equity it in or pay for it? Think about Habitat for Humanity. And Habitat for Humanity, you don't just get a house. You got to sweat equity your way into it, and then you got to be willing to pay off the loan. What are the terms under which you're going to help that target population? How are you going to reach them? How are they going to know that you're even trying to help them? Honeybee keepers are moving all over the country all the time. They're not on social media. They're not watching national advertising campaigns. How are we going to reach those people? Low-income families, they're not on social media. They don't have access to broadband internet. How are we going to reach them? What are our relationships with our supporters? Who are the people who can't be directly involved in our partnership, but whose help we need? Again, in the case of the honeybees, regulators. Government regulators, by law, can't sit on advisory councils like this. But we need them as an observer. We need them as helpers. Our funders, we needed help from outside fundraising organizations who would be willing to contribute but who didn't want to play a formal role. How are we going to engage them? What are we going to do? What are our key activities? How are we going to go out there and actually discreetly attack this thing? In the case of the honeybees, we came up with a set of 12 different pilots and a honeybee health prize that we're actually out there implementing right now. In the case of low-income solar, we put together a set of recommendations for the city and a set of recommendations for the banks, and they're working on figuring out how to implement those. So what are the specific activities we're going to take on? And then what are our resources? What are we bringing to the table? What are the assets? What's the money? What are the human capital and the financial capital that we need to make this a success? And then how are we going to work together? Under what terms are we going to do this? again, the case of the honeybees, if somebody comes up with a new nutrition supplement, who owns it? Is that common? Is that now in the common domain? Do companies get to own it? In the case of DC low-income solar, was it okay for companies to make money doing this, for banks to make money, or did we want this to all be nonprofit? So we've got to figure out how you're going to navigate, how we're going to work together. What's it going to cost? How are we going to pay for it? So this is a tool that is used in order to take these problems apart. And what I want to do now is actually do a set of cases with you. On your tables, you've got some materials, which you'll find there. Let me see if I can come down there. You should have an envelope, and in that envelope is a set of roles, and on a single piece of paper are a set of scenarios. And we've picked 5 scenarios: urban food deserts, blight and homelessness, job skills gap, access and aging, and cultural awareness. And I'm going to organize you so that if you're in this pillar right here, you're going to do food deserts. If you're in this pillar, you're going to do blight and homelessness. If you're here, you're going to do job skills gap. If you're here, you're going to do aging and access. And if you're over here, you're going to do cultural awareness. Hold on, stay with me. You're going to have a chance to read your scenarios and your cases in a second. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to draw out of this envelope a set of roles. Now, there might be more. There's 5 distinct roles, so you might have to draw twice. But we want one facilitator, and everything else you guys can decide which ones you want to play by randomly drawing the roles. But one of you is going to play the role of facilitator. One of you is going to be a nonprofit leader. One of you is going to be a business leader. One of you is going to be a citizen. One of you is going to be a city leader. And you're going to work on this case. And you're going to use this partner model canvas in 2 exercises that I'm going to set up here in a second. But I want to talk to you first about these roles. Most of you are in the nonprofit sector. So most of you are going to be playing a role that you don't play every day. And you know what I want you to do? I want you to ham it up. Every one of you knows a pain-in-the-butt city organizer. Every one of you knows a pain-in-the-butt citizen. Every one of you knows a cynical business person. Be that person. If you're normally the hopeful, the glasses half full kind of guy, be the pessimist. If you're normally the pessimist, be the optimist. I want you to really get into these roles and play them up. Because this is part of empathy. Part of empathy is putting yourself in the position of somebody else. So in this exercise, I want you to be those people and help to create this experience for us. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 rounds of exercise. The first exercise, which we're going to do between now and the time of lunch, is first, I want you to think to yourself, what's at stake for your character in this problem? What will happen if nothing is done? If we just continue with the status quo, are you okay? Are you in jeopardy for your life? Somewhere in between. And then I want you to also think about what's possible if you solve it. And I want you to think about that to yourselves. And we're going to do that for about 5 minutes. Probably less, 2 or 3 minutes. You guys are quick thinkers. You can do it fast. Then I want you to share and look for common cause, and then we're going to report out on common cause. Okay, guys, now hopefully what you're doing already, naturally, is just sharing your perspectives with each other. And what I want you to do when you're sharing your perspectives is look for common cause. Look for what is that Venn diagram overlap between what each of your different perspectives on this question, where you might have a common cause in trying to solve that problem. Or if you don't, that's fine too. But look for that common cause and see where you have the potential for collaboration based on your different characters. Okay, if I could have your attention back on me here in the center of the room for a second. We're going to do some sharing. Who's willing to share something about what their organization has at stake in solving this problem? I see a hand in the back. Yep.
I don't mind.
You're doing this on purpose just to make me run, I can tell. Where are your sneakers? So tell us who you are and what role you're playing and what the problem is you're working on.
Okay, I'm the facilitator of this cultural awareness problem. And
It's on.
In talking to the members of the community.
Yeah.
It's going in and out. In and out.
Trying to.
Okay, maybe if I don't move. In talking to the members of the community, we were represented with citizens, the older citizens who had been in the neighborhood for a while, the city, private business owner of a major corporation, business owner of a local corporation, nonprofit organization. We decided that we would have a festival in the park, bringing in both factions, where the nonprofit works with the younger, newer immigrants, and the citizen representative would bring in the older, just so they can get to know each other. The major problem that was felt was that both factions did not know each other, and there's fear in the unknown. So we were bringing them together with the help of all the businesses through media and so forth.
Awesome.
That was our first start.
I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Marcia Williams.
How about we give Marcia a big hand for sharing? Oh, here we go. What was at stake for you guys? What happened? Which problem were you working on?
We had the same subject, and we just added on it. We did exactly what they did. We had a party in the park. But what we added to it is, because we wanted to bring them together, we set up tables. And we had an education table. We had a table that, in case they weren't English speaking, so that the new and the old could come and explain to them what the problems are and what they would like solved. Because we felt by putting them in a group, we wouldn't really know what the issues are till we hear those issues. So we were going to set up education groups, because they might be having problems where they don't know where the kids go to school. They also might need a table. They don't have health. So we would set up all these tables so that the new immigrants and the older immigrants could say what their fears are in a fun, festive, and not feel threatened. So they would be able to open up.
And your name again?
I'm Dr. Oberg.
Let's give a big hand to Dr. Oberg. Now, you know what I loved about that one? I'm coming over here. Well, actually, about both of those. A, they're fun, right? But B, particularly in this last one, you guys went in search of data. And that's really important. You went to go out and get into the community to find feedback. You didn't assume that you guys were the experts. You went out in the community to get data. Yes, ma'am. Tell us who you are and what problem you were working on.
Okay, I'm Michelle Poole, and we were working on the job skills. So the mayor over here, we identified how we would benefit right away. So the mayor decided she was going to increase her tax base. My lady friend here, who has the grocery store, realized that her sales would increase, and that was better for her. Being the electrical contractor, I saw a lot of construction coming in. My nonprofit member over here, he saw a return to his donor base and things like that. And the wonderful citizen here, she saw where she would also gain by maybe doing some employment. So we figured, how could we better do job skills for these men that are coming out of the military that may not be sergeant and captain capacity that XYZ company needed. So we went back to our nonprofit guy, and he said he would become a job coaching, move his mission into some job coaching for these people once he determined what XYZ needed. So he's our new job coach. Being the construction person and happened supervisor level, different levels, I'm going to take my men and offer them to help mentor and be job coaching people to help mentor these people coming out. The lady here at the grocery store is going to supply food in that for us and different sponsorship parties. The mayor, God love the mayor. She's going to move those regulations so we don't have to sit there and wait 6 months for permits to get done in the city like we do some cities. She's going to move that along because she wants to increase that tax base. Now, my wonderful citizen lady over here with great influence, she's going to get out there and talk and talk and talk. And my facilitator over here is going to keep us on track. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Big hand. So I want to pick on my business leaders, right? You were a business leader, and you were a business leader, right?
No, she's the mayor.
You're the mayor. Were there two business? You were the other business, right? So let me ask you this. So if nothing was done about this job skills program or problem, what would happen to your business?
Well, the population of the city is contracting, so I'm really encouraged that a major organization wants to come in. That'll expand my ability to sell.
So if nothing is done, you stand
My
to lose
business
space.
contracts.
Right. And now, what are you willing to put into this to make it successful?
Well, I've got a limited budget, but I'm certainly willing to work in supplying funds for the nonprofit that's doing the training, as well as manpower.
Manpower, yeah. So, that's what, thank you very much. I think, big hand for her as well, please. The reason why I picked on the businesses there, and in each of the roles, right, you all have constrained resources. And that's true to life, right? We all have constrained resources. But one of the things that we're hearing increasingly from businesses is that they don't want to just give their money. They want to bring their whole selves to the problem. So they want to bring their skills, they want to bring their supply chains, they want to bring their employment opportunities, and really thinking through, like, how can you find ways of engaging not just checkbook philanthropy, but really whole corporation philanthropy. Who's got another one? Right, right here. Here we go. Tell us your name and which problem you were working on.
Go do it, babe. My name is Rosalind, and we're working on blight and homelessness.
Yeah.
And I had the part of the citizen. And as a citizen who've lived in the city for some time, I'm very concerned about the homelessness, the level of homelessness and the blight that has occurred in our city. And our business leader over here is just as concerned because having homeless individuals hanging around her business will not allow her clients to feel at ease to come and do business. So she's losing money, and I'm losing property value because if my city's going down the road, then something has to turn around. So we've gotten together, we've spoken with the mayor, our nonprofit is involved, and we all believe that we need to turn this around. And the way to do that is to identify some resources so that, one, we bring businesses into the community willing to invest, and our mayor is willing to give some incentive, maybe some tax breaks to get these corporations to come in, and we can turn these vacant lots, those vacant buildings, into viable businesses, which will in turn provide jobs, opportunities for people, and eventually help these individuals who are homeless once they have jobs and able to take care of themselves, then that will decrease that, and then it will solve our problems. And our nonprofit can assist us because they have programs to help and educate the residents in the city. So this is about it.
Awesome. Awesome. One of the things that's not necessarily true to life in our scenarios here is that you are all very helpful, cooperative people. Right? So I want to know, is there somebody who is playing like a very uncooperative, very cynical role here? Okay. Here we go. Tell me about that.
Hi. Excuse me, yeah.
Who are you again?
My name is Leslie Antoinette.
Hi, Leslie.
I am a citizen.
Uh-huh.
I've been invited to participate in this organization that has no name.
Uh-huh.
And they are going to fix this problem that is not clearly defined.
Right.
So I went to the bathroom.
Uh-huh.
And I figured that they'd have it all sorted when I got back.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
How'd that go? Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't have it all sorted. And so as they have been throwing out these very lovely, flipping my schizophrenic identity for a second, what are really useful ideas for different kinds of collaborations that I think would serve everyone well. My job is to tell them why that's not going to work.
Right.
It's only going to bring more homeless people into my neighborhood. It's only going to make me have to look at more people with their hand out as I go in and out of the grocery store.
Right.
I'm going to have to look at those people with those signs when I get to the stop sign or the stoplight. And so why do I want those people in my community? And unfortunately, I am able to inhabit this character because I have encountered so many of them. Which, sad but true.
So
You know,
what
I
was
have a
it-
nice trust fund. I'll write them a check after they sort it all out, and then I'll sell my house and I'm going to move.
So, right? Thank you. Thank you. What was it like to work with this very atypical citizen? Anybody want to share? Yeah.
Well, it was interesting because this angry citizen actually offered suggestions on how to make it work. She said to the business leader, well, what are you going to do? What can you do? And prompted the conversation from the business leader so that he added on, he would provide training and mentoring, and he offered quite a bit. And then the question came up, well, what is your business? And it was, I don't know what my business is, but I'm offering money to make things work for the homelessness, for the folks who have low economy with foods, people who were vandalizing the city. I'm the city leader. I didn't say anything because they took care of everything. And I don't have any money to offer. So they managed everything with themselves, and all I needed was a report to say how it's going to happen.
Right. Well, and we do have a name. You do have a name? What's the name of your?
It is Empowering Brownsville.
Empowering Brownsville. Well, so first of all, thank you guys. Let's give them a big round for working on that. So this is a simulation, right? This is not exactly how things go in real life. But I think there's a couple things that you can learn from this very simulation that you guys experienced right here. One is that people will walk away, go to the bathroom, and they try to ignore the problem if they can. That's 80% of the response from the public is that, right? So just kind of stop thinking about it, don't worry about it. But the other thing is that what we don't have here is we don't have a lot of data. Now that's, again, not necessarily atypical. A lot of times we're operating in the dark. But one of the ways to try to resolve that problem is to go get the data and to then try to put the data and the problem in the middle of the table rather than trying to put our proposals and our ideas in the middle of the table. Because what happens when you come up with an idea and she tries to shoot it down? It doesn't feel very good, right? You don't like that. You might feel personally attacked. But if you're putting the problem in the middle of the table and you're trying to deal with the data, what you're creating is a different kind of experience. You're creating an experience in which we're not attacking each other's ideas and therefore ourselves. Anybody who tells you it's business, it's not personal, is lying. It is personal. I take it very personally when somebody shoots down my idea. But what you're trying to do is depersonalize it and make it about an experiment, making it about an approach that we can try to work on together. Because people do that, right? They take on that role of, my job is to shut down bad ideas. And yeah, that's probably a good thing. We don't want to go out with a lot of bad ideas, but we want to try to put the problem in the middle of the table and deal with the data about the problem. I saw a hand. Who had a hand? Oh, right here.
I took on the role of an angry citizen too because my community lost jobs, and what I was dealing with was the ancillary fallout. If you lose jobs, then you have other small businesses that may have relied on this, the wages of the job. So you have double-digit unemployment, and then you have all these issues of problems, domestic problems, and mental health issues that goes with people who don't have jobs in our communities. And then you have the people who have worked hard for their homes, and now they have no money to keep up their homes. Mm-hmm. So I was the person that was like the really angry citizen.
Yes, sir. Give her a hand.
Give her a hand.
Thank you.
Well, just as in the other example, this particular angry person was actually a problem solver. What we sort of looked at is we were in Blythe in homelessness, and so many of our neighbors now are without jobs. And one of the things that we tried to do was to assemble an inventory of assets, looking at whether mechanics was very important. If I don't have a job, I need my car to run because I need to get to my next appointment. So we started looking at those very basic skills that we needed. Landscaping, we had many people that were afraid that their home values would go down. So we got painters, we got landscapers, and we put their task in a bartering bank that allowed them to now receive goods and services based on providing goods and services. So the first thing that we were trying to look at is the loss of jobs, loss of homes, increase in homelessness. The civility issue was the first thing. How do we take the look at the community and look at this collective impact and look at a common agenda, because we all are facing the same problem. We don't have a job. If I am to do a service, I need services for my kids. I need some type of way. I have an elderly person in my home. How do I leave and do my services without that ability? So the bartering service allowed us to get started. Our business person looked at the manufacturer that had left the community, and he is willing to give his time to start looking at how do we train residents, how do we recalculate what kinds of businesses can now take this building, because we still have an asset. We have a business that has left, but more importantly, we have a structure that is still there, and because the business hasn't been gone too long, it hasn't run down. So he's busy running around trying to attract people. Our upset consumer residents is looking at federal funding, and so we all took a collective piece as to begin to look at our steering committees. Each one of us would identify what in the community needs to be done, and each person then would work on bringing back some solutions based on those.
Awesome. Big hand. Okay, so we're going to go to lunch here in just a second. So, and there'll be lots more time after lunch for more sharing. So first of all, thank you all. Big hand for yourselves for that. That's a great set of starting here. So before we go to lunch, I want to point out a couple things, particularly out of that last little bit of sharing there. First of all, when we hear people who are angry, who are disaffected, and who don't want to help, that's how it manifests itself. It manifests itself in anger and disaffection and so forth. But oftentimes, those are the people who have the most passion about trying to solve the problem. And the real challenge for us is how do we meet those people where they're at, and how do we redirect that energy into more positive outcomes. The second thing I think was really important, what you guys did there, was that you broke the problem up into discrete pieces. One of the things that we see a lot of in the civil sector is, I call it the sixth grade soccer problem. Has anybody ever watched six-year-olds play soccer? They all kind of huddle around the ball. They don't play any one position. They just all kind of follow the ball down. And that's what we do in this sector a lot, right? We will pile on, and we will defend to the death the fact that our way of doing it is better than that other guy's way of doing it, even though we're all trying to solve the same problem. So trying to take the big problem apart, breaking it up into pieces and putting people into lanes and finding ways where they have the most common cause and the most ability to do good is profound. It's profound, but it's also really hard because we're all chasing single dollars. And that's a lot of the time why these things become difficult, is because why we do this whole six-year-old soccer problem is because we're all chasing limited donor resources. So what I want to do in the next scenario, in the next set of exercises, is to really delve into that problem. Think about how we can raise money, how we can break apart problems so that we can avoid this six-year-old soccer problem and find ways of really tackling and taking these very ideas that you've come up with already to scale.